Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MA 2017. And we have our next session right here at the auditorium. And this one's going to be on the science of empathy. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Danny No. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here today. It's an honor to come all the way from San Francisco to speak to all of you. I really do believe that you guys that are attending here are the future of Malaysia's innovation, development, and future. So it's hopefully you guys can learn something today, take it to your own types of startups, businesses, and jobs, and hopefully take you guys to the next wave. So let me bring this back. Oops. Okay, so today's talk is going to be on human factors. Human factors is the science of empathy. So what do I mean when I say the science of empathy? It's really quantifying what is happiness, quantifying all the qualitative terms that you hear every day. Does your product is easier to use? Does your product make people happy? Does your product actually make a difference in people's lives? And what I hope to get from everybody today is to learn these lessons of human factors and apply it directly to your startups and your products instantaneously. So who am I? Well, my name is Danny, once again. I'm from the Silicon Valley. A little bit about my experience of what I've worked on. I've worked in the automotive industry on self-driving cars. So a lot of that is new technology, and I worked on making sure that users understand when the car is in danger and understands its environment for self-driving. I've worked in medical devices, which are such as wheelchairs and pharmaceuticals, to help improve the safety and the reliability of these products and make it easier for people such as elderly, sick people use these products in a much better way. And then finally, I worked in Apple. I worked in the iPhone 4S, and we worked on improving how people use the applications, the antenna issues, and increasing reception based on how people hold and grip their phones. I've also taught in academia. I presented at TEDx in UC Davis, and we talked about user-centered design. But that was a 15-minute talk, so hopefully we'll go into a little bit more in detail and help you figure out a little bit more about how to use this science in your everyday life. So the one thing that I hope all of you guys get today, that you guys can take and apply every day, that if you truly believe what I'm telling you, you will have the secret weapon to be able to beat all the big companies. If you believe in the philosophy of human factors and user-centered design, the techniques and tools that I'm going to teach you will be very key to being able to target your customers and really solving for what they really want out of your product. So, a quick history lesson. Let's go back in the past. We all know these companies nowadays. You know Google, you guys know Amazon, you guys know Tesla. These are very large companies now. But back in the day, they had to compete against these large companies back when they first started. A lot of these companies started in garages. But they had to compete against the Yahoos, the Microsofts, the giant car manufacturers. But the question begs to differ. Why can these small companies, when they first started, succeed? Did they have better talent? No, because these big companies can pay the best salaries, the most money to anybody out there. Did they have more expertise? Not really. Tesla, when they first started, had no experience building a car before. Did they have more resources? No, they didn't have very much money. They didn't have very much ability to build connections. But Amazon had to build that from the very beginning. So what was it that these three companies, when they first started, did that allowed them to beat these large companies? They focused on what their populations wanted to accomplish. And this is through human factors and user-centered design. Just to understand a little bit better about what human factors is, I have a story for you. Okay? So there was a story of this group of team that wanted to build a walkway through the park. They just wanted to build a normal walkway, and they had an engineer, a designer, a marketer, and a human factors person. And they said, build me the ideal walkway through this park. The first thing the engineer says, first thing that the designer says is, I'm going to show them my vision. I have a vision of a perfect park where everyone can mingle and interact randomly, and they can create friendships, and it'll be a happy environment. So he's going to show them what the future is. And the engineer says, you know what? I'm going to tell them. I'm going to build something that makes people travel faster, travel more efficiently through the park, and they will be able to accomplish their tasks a lot better. I'm going to maximize people's performance. So that's his goals. The marketer says, you know what? I'm just going to ask them directly. So what he does is goes to the park and says, excuse me, ma'am, what do you want out of a perfect park? And of course, people are going to say, well, I like nature. I'd like to have more of that. So he says, we're going to give the people what they want. So what they came up with is this, is a circular walkway. It fulfills the engineer's dream of walking through the park efficiently because people go on the right. It also helps the designer because it gives their vision of random encounters. And it maximizes nature because you have a lot of nature inside the park and outside the walkway. So, the human factors person now chimes in. He says, hey, wait a minute, let me watch them. What are they doing? Do they even care that there's a walkway in the park? Is this something that they will actually use in the way that you think they'll use? And the other three says, nah, we're smarter than the people. We know what they want. We'll give them what they want. So, a year later, this is what happens. Can anyone see the problem? There is a shortcut right through the middle of the circle, which shows you, if you look at the test afterwards, that people didn't care. They wanted to get from one end of the park to the other. They could either have gone to the grocery store or gone to their homes, but they didn't want to take the route that they planned for them. They wanted to take the route that they wanted. And this is what human factors does. It doesn't design from your point of view. It designs from the point of view of your customer and how they want to use your product. You should always remember who your users are and design and understand to accomplish their goals. You don't tell them what their goals are. You help them achieve their goals. So here is how the industry standard works. This is how a lot of large companies operate. Okay? A lot of large companies operate in this standard that of price and function. If I have the correct price, for example, if it's very cheap, and I had the correct function that has a lot of functionality and a lot of features, then things would sell. That dictates the market, right? If it has more features and it costs more, then I can buy it relative to that balance. What human factors models does now, it says that price and function are still very important to your model. How much your product costs and what it can do is still very important. But it says there's another component, which is now a two-way dialogue versus a one-way dialogue, which shows that there's more involved, that you have to understand what a person's lifestyle is, what is their main objectives, and how do they develop a relationship with you as a company, that their feedback is heard and that their objectives are understood. And it creates more loyalty. When you think about loyalty, think of brands such as Apple. Think of brands such as Tesla. These all create a following that you can believe that the products that they sell have a certain amount of relationship to you as a customer. What is human factors? Simply put, it's the science of understanding how people interact with technology. And more than that, interacts with anything that they use in their daily life. Through this, it helps understand what the strengths, weaknesses, and capabilities of human beings are. How they move, how they actually interact with your product. How do you hold a pen, a bottle, a phone? It understands how you think. How can you multitask? What jobs are more responsible to a robot or application, and which ones require a conversation with a human being? And then finally, emotionally, when you use this product, how does it make you feel? And does it make you want to use this product again? So why do these big companies fail? Why do such large companies of the Yahoos and the giants of the old, tend to not see these startups come up and help disrupt the market? It's because they pay too much attention to the logical portion of your brain rather than the emotional component. What I mean by that, they think that the only thing that will dictate your purchase is the price and what kind of new features you have. So if you wanted to buy, like for example, a new phone, oh, it has the best screen, it has the fastest processors. But in reality, that's very minimal to your decision. It's more the emotional pull. I view this as kind of like elephant riding. So if you want to compare it to your everyday life, suppose that your brain is the rider and that your emotions are the elephant. Normally, you have great control over it. You can steer the elephant wherever you want it to go, right? If you want it to go left, you tell it to go left. But suppose that the elephant sees something that it wants, like food or water. Then you as a rider have no control over that, right? It's going to pull you wherever it wants to go. So this is the same way as I can tell you how you fall in love, right? When before you talk about your ideal mate, you say, I want someone that's nice, someone that's rich, someone that's tall, handsome, like myself. But then, when you meet that person that you fall in love with, it's completely different, right? All those things kind of fade into the background because your emotional pull is so much stronger than your logical pull. Here's a test to show you what I mean. Okay? One of these shapes is called Kiki, and the other one's called Baluba. Okay? So I want to do a quick test of everyone. Who thinks the one on the left thinks it's called Kiki? Please raise your hand. Okay? That's pretty good. I see a good amount. How many think on the right that's called Kiki? Okay. About a little bit less, but less in the crowd. Okay? So I'm going to show you. People that thought this is Kiki, you're right. And then vice versa, the Baluba is on the right. The reason why we have this is that it shows you that a lot of people, when they hear certain words, it initiates an emotional response. That things are sharper in words and sharper in content causes people to gravitate more toward one shape over another. And this shows you that despite us speaking many different languages and many different cultural backgrounds, that when we hear certain sharpness or hardness or see something grotesque, all of us as human beings react very similar. So now I'm going to teach you how human factors will affect your product design. So this is very important to the practicality of changing your current products and changing your philosophies to be better. I call it the Leans method. The Leans methods focus on 5 things. 5 things to prove that your product will be successful. First is learnability. Is your product easy to use? Second is efficiency. Does your product make a human better? Does it make me faster? Does it make me be able to accomplish more? Next is accuracy. Does it allow a person to be able to be more accurate in time? That I make less errors and I accomplish the task better. Is it memorable? Can I remember how to use this product? Is it easy to recall? And then finally, satisfaction. Am I happy? So let's go to the first one, learnability. When you think about learnability, the first key things that I use as an example for this is like a video game. I'm sure pretty much most people have played video games. When you first play a very good video game, there's no instruction manuals. There is no book that tells you how to play the game. You learn by playing the game. And it's very accessible. Little kids can play it, adults can play it, and possibly elderly people can play it as well. But the main thing is that there's really no instructions. And when you think of your iPhone, your Androids, your computers, what are the best experiences you have is the ones that you turn on and you use. And it's fun. Ultimately, you understand what the capabilities of your product are and what it can do. So once again, I go back to the iPhone, mostly because everyone can understand it. And it's not the most ideal product that I would say, but it's a good product to use as a basis. What makes it learnable? When you first buy your iPhone, is there an instruction manual? No. There's just this black square and a button. And suppose you never touched an iPhone in your life. All you had to do was touch that main button, and it powered on. And from there, you started to learn how the product worked. And instead of old cell phones, which used text and black and white, and you had to read everything, what the iPhone really did was use icons rather than text. because it's easier to understand from people that don't speak English, people that are not literate. It allows people that are very easy to understand through pictures what the functionality of that application was. And ultimately, it was easy for people that used Apple products before, iPods, MacBooks, to transition to a new technology such as the iPhone or the iWatch. So the rule number one is, I call it the KISS, which is keep it simple, stupid. One thing you should always remember is that your users are not as smart as you. They don't know your product as well as you, and to make something more complicated, it's very easy. Oh, sorry. Oops. It's always easy to add a lot more, to make your functionality a lot more complex and a lot more difficult to use. But where the artistry comes and your talent comes in is to make something very simple and clean to use. The next thing we're going to talk about is efficiency. This is the second one of the Leem's method. It's to evaluate your product in a very engineering manner, to evaluate your product as a normal metric of how fast your product can make someone accomplish a task, how much more accurate it can allow a person to become, and how much more comfortable or happy. And you can use that through metrics that, for example, my product improves speed times by 30 seconds compared to competitors. And you always want to compare it to what the current solution is. Remember, a good example that I have is when you use an autonomous driving car, even if it's the worst autonomous driving car in the world, is it still safer than a human being who is sleepy or drunk? And the answer is yes. The answer is always yes. So that makes it more worth it to a human being to have that technology out there. And you can always test your prototypes and your applications and your functionality against those metrics that you've established. Once again, I go back to the iPhone example. Efficiency. When it first came out, remember, when it first came out, you had an iPod, you had your keys, you had your wallet, and you had your phone. What an iPhone really does in efficiency is it makes me carry 4 things in one device. It does all those things now, right? So that's the main reason why we are gravitated to that, and that we are okay with the weaknesses. That if you remember how cell phones were before, you could not charge the phone for a week, months, and it cost maybe American dollars, less than $100. But nowadays, everyone's okay spending $800, and the iPhone X is $1,000. And you have to charge it every single day. These are the weaknesses that we're okay with. Because before, people said no one would accept this, only if you trade it with the things that they will gain from using your new application. And it makes your everyday tasks faster. You can use email faster. You can communicate various ways. You can communicate via voice, by pictures, by text, by phone call, versus a phone, you only had one method of communication, which is voice. Second rule, in order to defeat a current standard, your product has to be 3 times better. It has to be 3 times faster, it has to make your human 3 times more productive, or 3 times more happy. If you do not have the difference of 3, your product is not sufficient enough to make people commit to using your product versus the current solution. This is where a lot of startups fail, because they feel that it's just slightly better than the current solution. That is not enough for me to commit to a new technology, just because it's new. Next is accuracy. Accuracy is the thing that you want to be able to focus on, because a good experience may make people want to buy your product. A bad experience will make people never use your product again. Think about when you use a bad phone or use a bad application. A bad experience causes a visceral response that makes people feel that ultimately this is not a product I want to use. You want to be able to anticipate these errors and solve for them. Know how your product will fail and be able to anticipate those failures and mitigate them. And also, allow people to recover. One important thing that people always forget, especially when they're developing products, is that when something fails or when something doesn't work according to plan, they say, it's your fault. It's the user's fault. They used it incorrectly. That is not a good response to your customers who expect a complete product and expect you to be able to understand how it's supposed to work. Once again, let's go back to the iPhone example. A lot of it, whenever an application crashes, all you do is hit escape, the center button, and you get back to the home page. No matter what happens, right? You can always restart it from the very beginning and do it again. You know, it does a lot of things to correct for a lot of your mistakes, such as auto-correct spelling. Siri helps understand your questions. All these things are done to reduce the amount of errors that happen. It allows for different passwords. You can see with the new 10, it allows for facial recognition, fingerprint, button to input a code. There's so many different ways to access your phone now that even if you forget your password, there's ways that you still can use to access the phone. Rule number 3, idiot-proof your design. There is always someone that will use your product incorrectly. You need to prevent him from destroying your product. If you can beat him, you can beat anybody. So understand how people will use your product in everyday life and how to make sure that they don't ruin a good experience. Next is memorability. Memorability is allowing to create a product that connects to a person's experience. What I mean by that is that you should be able to mimic what their current solutions are without making it too new. A lot of startups fail because they introduce something so foreign and so technologically advanced that the people feel that it's strange and ultimately not for them. This is very important when you're dealing with populations that are foreign or old or very young because they are not used to change. Their change is very new to them. So you need to be able to connect your product to their previous experiences. And you should always expect people to forget. People forget things all the time. I forget everything all the time nowadays as you get older. The example I use is the iPhone. Once again, when you look at what people used before, they used a normal phone, which had a dial pad, a physical dial pad that you pressed on. But as you can see with the iPhone, they took the same convention and put it onto their interface. That's on purpose, because you have to recognize that this square block is still a phone. If they could have used anything, a rotary dial, but they chose something familiar that allows people to understand. The lesson is, don't reinvent the wheel. Use the wheel to break the wheel, which what I mean by that is, don't try to defeat your current product, whatever you're competing against. Take what they have gained from it and improve on that design. The last one I want to do in the Leams method is satisfaction. Create a great experience. What I mean by that, the best experience is not the one that you recognize as, wow, that was great. The greatest experience is one that you never noticed at all. Like when you drive in your car versus you get in your friend's car and drive it too. If you don't notice the difference, that means the experience is exactly the same. And finally, it should be fun. Just have some fun with it. You should be having fun. The user should be having fun. The iPhone, when you think about it as a product, it's one of the unique products that it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, you still can use it. And that's the beauty of it. It accesses so many people's ability to bridge technology and the populations. Before that, only the people that knew about computers, that were fascinated about computers, could access technology that we see today. All Apple did was make it more easy and fun for people to actually use it. Rule number 5, create a aha moment, a moment where a person uses your product and gets it, where you surprise them. If something's too easy to understand, there's no point of using it every day because it's something that's common sense. But if you get a product and they use it after a while and they say, wait, oh, I get how this works. They learn, and they learn with you of how to use this product and improve this product, and they feel that they're on the ride and journey with your experience. Once again, the 5 things is learnability, efficiency, accuracy, memorability, and satisfaction. If your product does all these 3 things, all these 5 things, then I guarantee that you will be successful in competing against larger companies. once again, human factors, what I'm telling you right now, is not within one person. That has the science and all the techniques and tools, but it's a company culture. You see it all the time in Googles and Apples and the Silicon Valley companies, where they understand in order to be more efficient and better with their customers, they need to be able to think big and really connect with what their customers want. Products are momentary. Your product is only 5 seconds of a person's time, maybe 10 seconds. But the experience you give them lasts for a long time. Create great experiences, I guarantee you create lifelong customers. Once again, if you take what I'm telling you today, you have the ability to combat all the largest companies out there and find a way to target the customers that they forgot about. The ability to target and really address how your population is really going to want to use their product and build that loyalty with you and create a better product that will allow you to eventually grow to scales that you could never believe before. And the last thing I have to say is, after learning all of this, are you guys ready to get started? Thank you. Is there any questions? Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Hi. My name is William. I'm from Monash University, Malaysia. Yep. Thank you very much for coming here today to give us this talk about limbs. Yeah. So I actually have a question. Like, okay, like previously you mentioned about like how before Apple actually comes in, people are not like skeptical about it. Like, hey, what is this phone? Like, what does it do and stuff like that. So bringing back to the question that I want to ask is that how can you actually educate someone? For example, let's take example mobile application. So how do you actually use the mobile application to actually educate someone of something they were not aware of?
So once again, the question is, how do you educate someone on an application that they have never used before? Is that correct? Once again, if you recall, is really connecting to things that they're familiar with. So if your application, for example, books an airline, you want to mimic something that is very similar to how they're currently booking an airline, but changing it in a way that they can take it, understand that it's familiar, but taking them on a completely new direction. It's like how you play one game and then you transition to a similar game. They take the fundamentals of that game and they bring it to a different one, and they change it of how it does. And even though that the ingredients are the same, the entire recipe is completely different. Any other questions?
Thanks for the very interesting presentation. I was just wondering, how do you get all this information? Do you have to do a survey or something like that to come up with that Liam's factors?
So is your question saying, how do I do it, or? Okay.
How do you get the information? What people want? What is the learnability and so on?
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that you would work on as you work on the prototype or whatever, but there are things that you don't know unless if you go out to these people and you differentiate the people who's a marketeer and the human factor person. Aren't they quite the same?
Okay, so the question is like, what are the tools and how do I separate, marketers and human factors? Once again, what a human factors does that's mainly different is they observe. They are not asking direct questions, because if I asked you, what do you want out of your car? Right? You're going to say, I want a faster car, or I want a cheaper car, or a cooler car. You're not going to think of a self-driving car. But if I see you every day and you're scared of driving, and it's a very terrible experience, and that you wish someone else could drive, we can see that even if it's a robotic car, you would want to use that. And what we do to get this data is through observation. What simply put is give your product to your users and video record them, and seeing where they have frustration or seeing what happens. I think what people do a lot of times is they want to interject, like, wait, you're using it wrong. Wait, you need to do it this way. When in reality, you should let them have their mistakes because you're not going to be there when they actually use your product. And you should be able to see how they're currently using the product and how you can be able to fix what they're currently having problems with. So there's lots of tools, but the clearest thing is handing your product and watching them and taking notes and then asking them afterwards, like, you did it this way, were you frustrated? And then take note of that and see how your product can help solve that.
Hello. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Danny. My name is Jin. I just graduated this year. So my question for you is actually about the human factors. You mentioned that human factors is one of the way you can defeat a giant company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm failing to see the factor of human factors in the context of what happened to Toys R Us. So
Yeah.
with regards to their advertisement and also their marketing strategies, of course, they channel lots of funds into deploying human factors with the kids. So as compared to their competitors such as Walmart and Amazon, which I don't think they had market that human factors as much as compared to Toys R Us. But why are they failing and ultimately declaring their bankruptcy? Thanks.
So the question is, if I'm understanding, is the Toys R Us example, they repeatedly filed, they just filed for bankruptcy, so they are considered a failed company, and you're saying what they did, I'm not sure if they had a human factors team? What went wrong with Toys R Us is that they lost their customer. That's simply put, they lost their customer. You as a parent, when the prices are cheaper at Amazon and it gets shipped faster in Amazon, why would you buy from Toys R Us unless they're cheaper or faster? What Toys R Us kind of failed at is that what made it fun to go to a store at Toys R Us is that it was for kids. You go to a store, it's for kids. Everything is decorated in a way that's for kids. And now with the generation changing and that they're not going to the store anymore, did Toys R Us adapt to how that population changed? No, they did not, because kids are now, playing on apps on their iPhones, and they don't know why they need toys. So if I had any recommendation to Toys R Us is you have to match the experience of what what the kids are doing to get them to use your services and buy your toys. That's simply put.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Danny. Just a quick question. How do you align your organization to focus and try to do the things that you just said?
So the question is what I understand is how do you get your organization to believe what I'm telling you, right? It's very simple. Number one is the easiest one is that it saves money. If you do what I'm telling you with the Leans method and human factors, is that you prevent people from hating your product, causing mistakes, having recalls, having any issues with your product, which ultimately saves money because you're not fixing things after it's been deployed. You've already found all the problems. Second, it allows you to be able to increase your development speed, because if you're finding out what your users are using before you start making your product, you don't have to change your product as it's being developed. You already know what they want, and you're developing toward that. So it saves money on the production end. And finally, it allows for key metrics that your company goes toward. So no longer it's someone saying this, and the customer now says this, and then someone says this. This is the metrics that we're shooting for. We're shooting for this product to create, to become 30 seconds faster than our rivals. Attaching an email application is 30 seconds faster than the current solution of attaching it to your computer. Those are the three major reasons that ultimately any company would do. It's money, money, money. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much, I think.